Somewhere on the turquoise stretch of the Mediterranean, past the point where ordinary boats stop and something else entirely begins, a vessel the length of 2 football fields moves without a sound. There is no roar of an engine, no spray kicked up in a violent wake, only the quiet hum of turbines, and the gentle parting of water beneath a hull worth more than most countries' annual budgets. This is the realm of the mega yacht, and tonight we step aboard the kind of floating empire that only a handful of people on Earth will ever own, and fewer still will ever fully understand. To call these vessels boats is almost an insult. A mega yacht in the truest sense is a private nation unto itself, a self-contained kingdom with its own laws of luxury, its own economy of excess, and its own rules for what is possible. The most extravagant of them carry price tags exceeding $8 billion when every submarine, helicopter, art collection, and custom feature is tallied. To understand how a boat could cost as much as a small country's infrastructure budget, you have to first understand who builds them, why they exist, and what kind of person decides that the ocean itself isn't big enough unless they own a piece of it. The story of the modern mega yacht begins not with billionaires, but with shipyards. Places like Lürssen in Germany, Fincantieri in Italy, and Oceanco in the Netherlands have spent decades perfecting an art form that blends naval engineering with interior design, so obsessive it makes 5-star hotels look modest by comparison. These shipyards don't advertise. They don't need to. Their clients find them through word of mouth, whispered in private jets and boardrooms, through introductions made by bankers who manage more zeros than most people can count. When a client finally sits down with a naval architect to begin designing their yacht, the conversation rarely starts with a budget. It starts with a feeling. They want to feel like they're floating above the world, not simply sailing across it. Construction of a mega yacht can take anywhere from 3 to 7 years, employing thousands of specialized workers, from Italian marble cutters to Swiss watchmakers, who are brought in to craft custom timepieces built into the walls of a captain's quarters. Every mega yacht begins as a massive steel skeleton, welded together in dry docks the size of aircraft hangars. Engineers spend months simply calculating the vessel's center of gravity, because at this scale, a poorly balanced yacht isn't an inconvenience, it's a catastrophe waiting to happen in open water. Naval architects run stability simulations for months before a single piece of teak decking is ever laid down. Once the hull is complete, the real transformation begins. Interior designers, often poached from the world of high fashion or luxury hospitality, are given essentially unlimited budgets and told to build something that has never existed before. This is where the money starts to become almost abstract. A single stateroom might require an entire quarry's worth of rare stone, shipped from a mountain in Italy, cut to precise specifications, and polished by hand over the course of several weeks. Ceilings are often lined with gold leaf applied by artisans trained in techniques passed down through generations of Venetian craftsmen. Some yachts feature entire art galleries below deck, climate-controlled to museum standards, housing pieces by the same painters and sculptors, whose work hangs in the Louvre or the Guggenheim. But the true engineering marvel of an $8 billion yacht isn't what's visible above the waterline. It's what's hidden beneath it. Many of these vessels carry their own private submarines, capable of diving hundreds of feet to explore coral reefs and shipwrecks that ordinary tourists will never see. Some carry mini research labs, staffed by marine biologists whose sole job is to catalog rare species encountered during the owner's voyages, blending genuine scientific curiosity with the ultimate private nature documentary. Helipads capable of supporting twin-engine helicopters are standard on the largest builds, often disguised as swimming pools or sun decks that mechanically shift and fold away when not in use, revealing a hidden landing pad beneath. Security is another dimension entirely. On the largest yachts, the Beach Club, a lounge area built at the yacht's stern with direct access to the water, often doubles as a blast-resistant safe room. Some owners, wary of piracy in certain shipping corridors or simply security-conscious to an extreme degree, install missile detection systems normally reserved for naval vessels. Bulletproof glass lines the windows of the owner's private quarters. A yacht of this caliber typically travels with an escort vessel, sometimes referred to in the industry as a shadow yacht, which trails a mile or two behind, carrying extra fuel, additional crew, jet skis, dirt bikes, and sometimes even a second helicopter, so that the primary yacht's silhouette remains sleek and uncluttered by visible toys. Running a vessel like this requires a small army. Crew counts on the largest superyachts can exceed 100 people, organized with the same hierarchy you'd find on a naval ship. There is a captain, of course, but beneath him are department heads for engineering, hospitality, security, and entertainment. Chefs on these yachts are often poached from Michelin-starred restaurants, offered salaries that dwarf what they'd earn running their own establishment on land, in exchange for round-the-clock availability and the discretion to never speak publicly about what they've seen aboard. Stewardesses undergo training that rivals hospitality programs at the world's top hotel management schools, learning not just how to fold a towel into the shape of a swan, but how to anticipate a guest's need before the guest even realizes they have one. The design process itself deserves its own chapter in this story, because before a single sheet of steel is cut, an owner and their design team will spend months, sometimes years, refining every detail through scale models, virtual reality walkthroughs, and endless rounds of revisions. Some owners commission multiple design houses to compete for the same project, presenting wildly different visions for the same hull, before selecting the concept that best matches their taste. It is not unusual for an owner to reject an entire finished deck layout deep into construction, because the flow between rooms didn't feel right, forcing the shipyard to tear out months of finished carpentry and start again. This level of perfectionism is baked into the culture of mega yacht building, where the client is never told no, only told how long it will take and how much more it will cost to get it exactly right. Naval architects often describe these projects as building a skyscraper that also has to float, withstand hurricane-force seas, and remain perfectly stable, while carrying the weight of a helicopter landing on its roof. The technology packed into these vessels rivals anything found in a modern auto data center. Central control systems allow an owner to adjust the yacht's climate, lighting, and entertainment from a tablet, whether they are standing on the bridge or lying in bed in the middle of the night. Some yachts feature retractable movie theaters that convert from an outdoor cinema under the stars into a private IMAX-style screening room at the push of a button. Communication systems aboard these vessels are built to maintain secure, high-speed internet access even in the most remote stretches of open ocean, allowing an owner to run a global business empire from thousands of miles away from the nearest office. Redundancy is built into nearly every system, because a mega yacht anchored off a remote island cannot simply call a repair technician if the propulsion system fails. The vessel has to be capable of fixing almost anything with tools and parts already on board. The economics of ownership are staggering in ways that go beyond the initial purchase price. Industry experts widely cite what's known as the 10% rule. Maintaining a superyacht costs roughly 10% of its total value every single year. For an $8 billion vessel, that means an annual maintenance bill in the hundreds of millions, covering fuel, crew salaries, dockage fees at exclusive marinas, insurance, and the near-constant refurbishment required to keep every surface gleaming. Docking alone can cost tens of thousands of dollars per night in ports like Monaco or Porto Cervo, assuming a berth is even available, since space for vessels of this size is fiercely limited, and often reserved years in advance for the world's most prominent owners. Fuel consumption on these giants is almost incomprehensible to anyone used to filling up a car. Some of the largest yachts burn through thousands of liters of diesel per hour at cruising speed, translating to fuel costs that can exceed $1 million for a single extended voyage. This has pushed a handful of owners toward experimenting with hybrid propulsion systems, and in a few cases, hydrogen fuel cells, not necessarily out of environmental conviction, but because the sheer scale of fuel costs has become impossible to ignore even for the ultra-wealthy. Life aboard one of these yachts follows a rhythm that few outsiders ever witness firsthand. Mornings often begin with a private chef preparing breakfast tailored to whatever dietary regimen the owner is currently following, whether that's a specific macronutrient split designed by a personal trainer or an entirely bespoke menu built around ingredients flown in overnight from specific farms around the world. Days at sea are filled with a mix of business calls, routed through satellite communication systems capable of maintaining a stable connection even hundreds of miles from shore, and leisure activities that blur the line between vacation and command center. It's not unusual for a major acquisition to be finalized from a sun lounger on the aft deck, phone in one hand, sparkling water in the other, while a submarine pilot preps the vessel's underwater craft for an afternoon excursion. Entertaining aboard these yachts has become something of an art form in its own right. Guest lists often include a mix of business partners, celebrities, and old friends, all flown in via private jet to the nearest airport, then ferried to the yacht by tender boat or helicopter. Evening events might feature a private concert, with musicians paid enormous sums to perform for an audience of perhaps 20 people gathered on the deck under the stars. Some owners have been known to charter fireworks displays for a single evening's entertainment, visible for miles across the water, a fleeting reminder to everyone else in the harbor of just how differently wealth operates at this altitude. Yet for all the opulence, there's a strange irony that runs through the mega yacht world. Many of these vessels spend the majority of the year sitting empty, crewed, and maintained at full readiness, waiting for an owner who might visit for only a few weeks annually. The rest of the time, the yacht exists purely as a standby asset, a floating monument to what wealth can build, cared for by a crew whose entire job is to keep a palace immaculate for a resident who is almost never home. Some owners have leaned into this reality by chartering their yachts out to other wealthy clients during the months they aren't using it themselves, generating rental fees that can run into the hundreds of thousands of dollars per week, offsetting a fraction of the yacht's staggering upkeep costs. The environmental conversation around these vessels has grown louder in recent years, and its attention the industry can no longer fully ignore. Critics point out that a single mega yacht's carbon footprint can rival that of hundreds of average households combined, and public sentiment toward visible displays of extreme wealth has shifted, particularly in the years following global economic hardship. In response, a new generation of naval architects has begun designing yachts with sustainability as a selling point, rather than an afterthought, incorporating solar panels into deck design, waste heat recovery systems, and hulls engineered for maximum fuel efficiency, even if the yacht itself remains, at its core, an extravagant use of resources by any measure. As the sun begins to set on our voyage through this hidden world, it's worth stepping back to ask what these vessels really represent. They are, in the most literal sense, floating monuments to ambition, engineering marvels born from decades of shipbuilding expertise and unlimited budgets. They employ thousands of skilled workers, sustain entire industries in coastal towns from Bremen to Genoa, and push the boundaries of what's mechanically possible on the open water. But they are also symbols of a gap between the ordinary and the extraordinary so vast that an $8 billion yacht can exist in the same world where most people will never see that kind of money in 100 lifetimes combined. Whether you see these vessels as inspiring feats of human engineering or as troubling monuments to inequality, likely depends on where you're standing when you look at them, whether from a paddleboard admiring the silhouette against the sunset, or from the deck of the yacht itself, sparkling water in hand, watching the rest of the world grow smaller in the distance. Either way, they remain among the most fascinating creations of the modern age, a reminder that when human ambition meets unlimited resources, the results can be as beautiful as they are almost impossible to fully comprehend. And as shipyards continue pushing the boundaries of size, technology, and luxury, year after year, one thing seems certain: the next record-breaking mega yacht is already being designed somewhere in a quiet drafting room, waiting for the person wealthy enough to make it real.